Hey!
Hi everybody, welcome to Horrible Time.
With Pebble Dash.
That's me. And Anth.
That's me.
Hey Bab.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm not too bad. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you.
Good.
I'm so glad to be off work. Honestly, I'm so tired.
Oh god, I bet.
What have you been doing?
Nothing much really. Again.
Lockdown.
Yeah. But I have been rewatching Buffy.
Ooh, yes you have, because I've been walking in and hearing you watching Buffy. What season are you watching?
So I am just at the start of season 7 now, so the last season.
Oh.
Yeah.
You love Buffy, don't you?
I do. And every time that I watch it, I discover something new, so...
Yes, you told me today. What did you tell me you discovered today?
So Buffy the Vampire Slayer was the first TV show ever to use Google as a verb.
No, it's a verb.
Well, a verb is something that is used to describe an action.
Ah, like run.
Yeah, so like run, Googled.
Ah, is that the sentence they used in Buffy?
And that's what they used in Buffy, and it's the first ever show to do it.
Oh, she's fancy.
Learn something new every day. Well, every Buffy rewatch, apparently.
Yeah, I do remember that Courtney Cox, who played Monica on Friends, was the first person to say period on American TV.
Oh.
Obviously not in Friends, in an advert, I would assume for tampons.
For tampons?
Yeah, more than likely. So, what are we doing this week? What's happening?
Well, this week we have a very special guest.
Ooh, do it.
Well, it is the amazing Baron Lavey.
Oh,
yes, we do love Baron.
Honestly, for everybody listening, if you think our voices are rotten, you're going to be so happy when you listen to Baron. They have the loveliest velvety voice.
Oh, those velvety tones.
So good. And they also spoke on some really amazing kind of viewpoints.
Yeah. The
viewpoints they came from, spoke about how horrors influenced them in general in life and in performance and creativity, and even told us a couple of spooky stories.
Oh, yes. Terrifying.
Hi, Baron.
Hi, how are you?
Hi. We're good.
Very, very good, thank you.
Fabulous. The silence was wonderful.
Oh, of course. Because, I mean, during the lockdown, you really have to consider how you are.
Yeah, you have to actually think about it, don't you?
Yeah, it's not just an off-the-cuff answer anymore, is it?
No. Not at all. What have you been up to? What's been happening?
Oh, well, I'm sure everyone is very aware that I'm all over the TikToks.
Yes.
So long as between the time of recording this and this going out, if TikTok haven't decided that they're going to delete my account, I should have hit 50,000 followers, which is exciting.
Oh, well done.
That's amazing.
It's, if it wasn't 50,000 children, yeah.
Well, this is very true.
Although, to be fair, I've been doing a lot of stuff that isn't necessarily Harry Potter based anymore. So I've developed a lot of LGBTQIA plus followers who I'm just confusing with the way I look. So
I've obviously just joined TikTok and I follow you. What is your TikTok again?
It's at Baron Lavey.
Obviously. So I follow your TikTok and I love reading your comments specifically because it generally is femme presenting people saying they're confused.
Yes. Or non-binary people simping. Big style simp. They will simp over anything that I post. They simp over Nigel Thornbury.
Well,
I'm just like, what is wrong with you?
What is a simp?
It's so simping, and I've had to be taught this because of obviously my followers are children and they were saying all these words and I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm sweet. But it's basically having a crush on someone. So if you are a simp, you are someone who crushes on people.
Oh.
Why do we need a word for that?
I don't know. It's just the way language evolves, isn't it?
It's weird for everything these days.
There really is. My favourite word's still cunt.
The best word.
And
so
motherfucker.
We're allowed to swear on this then.
Oh dear, knock yourself out. Swear as much as you like. Oh, yes.
That was like listening to Mrs. Doubtfire right there. That was
We like to keep it camp.
Of course.
So what's your experience on TikTok been like? I know, obviously, knowing you personally and seeing your TikTok, that it seems like it's overall positive, but there's been some not so positive experiences.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's as a platform in general, it's great for pushing yourself out there. You get noticed quicker. I developed a following very quickly. But because mine is mostly cosplay, obviously there are people within fandoms who like to gatekeep a fandom in the same way that people gatekeep drag. It's very much like that, except because, of course, it's an online platform and people can say what the fuck they want, when the fuck they want it, they want to say it, and to who they want to say it to, then people don't hold back. And I had to turn my duets to mutuals only very recently, which made me sad because I really enjoy seeing people's duets to my content, because it's part of the reason I do it. I want to be able to develop connections with people who enjoy my content and want to do something creative with it. It's about it's the creative platform. I really enjoy it for that. But I had some kids recently who decided they were going to stitch my videos, and at the end of the videos they were just coming on to say that vile, that I should kill myself because I didn't know what gender I was. It was really vicious stuff. So I was like, and they must have all been connected. They must have all been talking about it because it was orchestrated almost, so that I got 6 or 7 of those in a day, and 1 or 2 of those can be can cause quite an effect on you. But
definitely
7, it was too much, and I was like, right, duets on mutuals for the time being, because I need to not have that kind of shit.
That's such a shame.
Yeah. And obviously the Harry Potter fandom has caught fire recently, and everyone hates everyone. I mean, me and Ivy were just going on there doing what the fuck we wanted, not really paying much attention to what was actually canon to the books or the films. We created our characters around the characters that were there. Everything that we did is something that J.K. Rowling would not agree with.
Exactly.
And that's exactly why we did it. We love the fandom regardless of JK's stance on our existence. But there are some people who don't necessarily agree with that. So whilst we managed to get away with not having to deal with a lot of shit, there was a lot of anxiety in actually posting any Harry Potter content with the way it was blowing up for other people. So it was just easier to go, right, we're taking a step back. We're not going to do that for a bit. So it's meant that I've been able to concentrate on some other characters. I've got a horror character coming, so that's exciting.
Ooh. Any clues?
Well, it's 2 looks for the one character. One includes a grey suit, grey top hat, and blue sunglasses. And the other includes a double beehive in grey.
I know who this is.
With a red robe.
Yes.
A double beehive?
Come on, think about it. Very famous early 90s film.
Is it Mars Attacks?
No, he's the same character.
I'm being exposed on a horror podcast for not knowing anything about horror.
You're being exposed because I've already told you who this is
months ago.
Yeah.
Let's not pretend that I listen. This is why I'm recording a podcast, so I can go back and listen to it and be like, oh, I remember this conversation. Tell me who, I'll cut it out. So Baron, the character, I really hate using this word nowadays, but Baron, the character, the creation of you, tell us a little bit about who Baron is, where it came from, where his name comes from, etc.
Okay, so when I first started drag, I was a drag queen. That was a long time ago.
And what was your name?
Helga von Rugmuncher.
Thoroughly entertained.
It was a moment. But when I returned to drag, because I left drag for a while, I returned to drag when I saw that alternative drag was becoming a thing. And I was like, well, this is what I wanted to do in 2007, but it certainly wasn't going to be accepted back then. So I decided to bring my drag back, but obviously I knew I didn't want to do drag queen anymore. I'd done a fair amount of drag king back in 2007, but I wanted to take it to another level. I'd been following some incredible drag kings for a decade, and I was like, I know where I want to go with this. My name, Baron Lavey, comes from Lavey, as in Anton Lavey, the founder of the Church of Satan.
Oh, yes.
So good, so good.
And I think the Baron part obviously also reflects a title as well. The family I grew up in was an odd family, so I've always been aware of people like Anton Lavey, who is such an iconic character within gothic / horror
indeed, yes,
culture, really.
Yeah,
because it is a culture. This is the thing with, obviously people talk, listen, we all do drag, and pop culture is a kind of massive reference for almost everything that we do. But I think people forget that there is a horror culture or a alternative culture or whatever you want to call it that is almost the antithesis of pop culture.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's why we decided to do this podcast, was to kind of the alternative scene. So obviously last night I was doing Penny's Tuesday with Jack, and we spoke about the differences and kind of how we grew up, and I very much grew up in the alternative scene. Wasn't really a major part of the gay scene. There wasn't really that around me. So that kind of formulated me and exposed me to maybe different things. And obviously, Anth, you kind of were heavily and still are heavily into the alternative scene as well.
Yeah, that's all that I know, really.
Yeah. So I think it kind of dictates where our horror obsession kind of lies and comes from.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Obviously, I grew up, I don't actually know how old Anth is, but I'm a similar age to Pebble.
And Anth. He'll tell you he's young, but he's not.
I'm very young.
33. 33, okay. So yeah, okay, similar ages. But I think I grew up in a very similar the way to the pair of you. I grew up in the goth scene. Tried to say that I wasn't emo.
Didn't we all?
We were. I never. I claimed that title. King of the emos, dear.
And going to the rock clubs and going to the underage rock nights, etc. Because it was more my thing until I got to about the age of 15, 16, and I was like, yeah, but gay bars don't let us in. Like, they'll serve us regardless. So,
yeah, fair. Do you have a favourite horror genre or particular horror film or book or series of books or gay, anything like that? What would you say is kind of some of your favourite horror related?
Right, so I like a couple of genres, and I like them mixed as well. So I really love sci-fi horror. I'm a proper sci-fi nerd, you know me. I love my Star Trek, and so I love the monster movies. I love Cloverfield. I love Alien. I love Predator. And The Cube. No one ever talks about The Cube.
The Cube is so good.
We have this conversation all the time because no one remembers The Cube. And there was 3 films. And the last film tied to the first film. And it was just
so clever.
Oh, they were so... I mean, the acting was never that great.
They were fucking awful. But
they really were. They really were. But they were so good and so kind of not too far in the realm of sci-fi, as in not too far out of the realm of reality.
Yeah, it could happen.
Yeah.
And they were just so clever, and it sticks out in my mind the moment where someone thinks they're getting a drink. I think it's in the first one, and they get really excited. They jump in, and there's like water, and they're drinking the water, and then suddenly all of their skin starts melting off because it's actually acid. And I was like, yes, this is where I'm saying, like, I am happy with this.
It's funny because with the films like Cube, to me, they're almost the original kind of, torture porn, like the original Saw movies. It was all different tests and stuff like that, and it was very kind of, but more cleverly done than the Saw movies, which I do love. I love the Saw movies.
I never got into the Saw movies. I think it was just, for me, it just felt like violent for violence sake.
Oh, see, but I love that, and I'm very open about it. I don't care. I like to see people die on my screen, and if you're going to have a body count of 75 over the series of your full movies, then everyone better die a different way, and they do. And that, to me, is entertaining.
I do appreciate that. And I do love a death on a screen.
Yes.
But I also want to be able to think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I also love my cult classics as well. So Nightmare on Elm Street, Exorcist, Poltergeist. Poltergeist was the first horror film I actually ever watched as a child.
How old were you?
I don't remember, but I bugged my mum. I was like, I really want to watch a horror film. Let me watch a horror film. And she eventually relented and gave me the VHS for Poltergeist. And I took it upstairs. It was nighttime. And at the bottom of my bed, I had this unit that had like a huge big cardboard box in it that had all of my teddies in it, directly underneath the TV. And I had the film on, and it got to the iconic "Come to the Light, Carol Ann" moment.
Oh yes.
And the box broke. And I screamed so loudly. I was so upset, so scared, because like it was just had to wait till that moment for it to happen. Teddies went spilling out all over the place. My mum came running up to check that I was okay. I was in bits, but that was also the moment that I realized that I was a fucking adrenaline junkie, and I needed to watch horrors for that reason.
Definitely. There's something about horrors that does that to you, especially if you have that memory from a childhood experience.
Absolutely.
It's really good.
Especially if you get that moment. I always remember, and I've told you loads, the very first time that I ever watched The Exorcist, I was in the house by myself. I was like maybe 14 or 15, and it was on Sky, and all night I'd been flicking channels, and eventually flicked to The Exorcist and was like, right, I'm going to give this a go. And I got a fright at some part. I can't remember what happened, but I couldn't change the channel. No matter what button I pushed, it was on the screen. So then, of course, my drama queen mind, the TV's possessed, so I put a sheet over the TV and unplugged it. Because I was traumatized.
Oh, I live for that. See, I also grew up with the Goosebumps books.
We love Goosebumps. Oh, yeah.
And I have a story about the Goosebumps books as well. I have a fear of sponges because of a Goosebumps book.
Which one?
It came from beneath the sink. I still remember it vividly. Mm-hmm. It was about this sponge that came from beneath the sink.
As they tend to do.
Yes.
But it had these glowing red eyes. It looked like a natural sponge. Like, that's what I have an issue with, natural sponge.
Oh.
And they called it a gruel, and it made bad things happen to the people that owned it. And I remember reading the book and being terrified, it made the dog die and everything. It was really brutal. But then when they had the TV show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the TV show, I remember being really scared of it because obviously it was giving me that visual of that sponge. Mm-hmm. But I went to re-watch it last year or the year before because I noticed that they'd put them on Netflix. And I was like, Libby, you need to watch this with me because this is the reason I'm scared of sponges. And it was a fucking piss take. And I was like, what is this? Why was I so scared of this? But it didn't stop me being scared of fucking sponges.
It is so weird if you go back and watch things that you were scared of. For me, my favourite Goosebumps book was always Say Cheese and Die.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Love that book.
So good. And actually, so R.L. Stine has actually relaunched the Garbage Pail Kids books. Do you remember the Garbage Pail Kids?
I do. And there's actually... there's a YouTube creator called Onyx the Fortuitous.
Mm-hmm.
He's the guy that, for a while, when news reports were like asking people opinions on the street. He was the one that was like happened to always be there. Like there was a satanic temple opening and he was interviewed, and he was the one that was choke me, devil daddy, choke me.
Oh yes, him, yes. Oh my god.
Yes, follows me on TikTok.
Yeah.
So he has like a huge big display in his bedroom of the Garbage Pail Kids, and I'd forgotten they existed until I saw that display, and I was like, "What the fuck?"
I loved the Garbage Pail Kids as a kid, and then my uncle caused me to have nightmares. He bought me, because you used to get it, and it was like big cards, and there was like chewing gum and some other stuff in it, almost like a lucky bag. So he had loads of them on his wall, and I had loads of them on my wall, and there was one that was head of the class, and it was just a severed head on the teacher's desk.
Yeah.
And we were out the back of my grand's flat at some point, and he locked me in the shed and told me that the head of the class was in there. And I had nightmares for like 3 nights. Like, I don't know why, but the head of the class and my nightmares became the devil trying to poke through the window with his tail.
Oh, God.
I was traumatized.
I'm looking at the pictures now, and it's all just flooding back to me.
Because they're gross. That was the thing about the Garbage Pail Kids.
Oh, yes.
Did you ever see the movie?
No.
You have to watch the movie. It's like, I think it's little people, but they're in costumes of the Garbage Pail Kids. It's terrible. It's got no plot, but it's disturbing. People just peeing themselves and snot everywhere.
Oh,
so gross.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's all flooding back to me, and it was almost like when I saw the pictures on that guy's wall, I was like, it was like a triggered memory that had like obviously pushed back. I had no intention of ever remembering.
Yeah, every now and again, the memory comes back to me, and I'll watch the film and be like, ugh, I was so scared of these. Obviously, you said sci-fi is a huge one of your horrors. Anything else?
I love the gothic horror, like true gothic horror. Your Bram Stoker's Dracula, your Dorian Gray, because I love the opulence. I love the Victorian, the corsetry, the lace and the leather, and the dark stately homes, the dark mahogany wood, the candles. I live for all of that proper gothic, Victorian gothic, that feel. Even if it's not overly scary, I think the addition of all of that just makes me feel like I'm in a horror.
Definitely. Did you watch Penny Dreadful?
I loved Penny Dreadful.
Underrated.
Absolutely, 100%. I've got a Penny Dreadful cosplay coming up, actually.
Amazing. Who are you doing?
I'm not going to say yet.
No, you're not going to tell us. Would you say that horror has influenced your creativity at all?
So definitely. So I remember when I was just starting my drag in 2007, back on MySpace, and I used to follow a burlesque. There was this wonderful burlesque artist based in London who used to do, I think she was based in London, who used to do horror-based burlesque. And I remember watching it thinking, this is what I want my drag to be like, because she was absolutely phenomenal. She accidentally froze one of her toes off during a performance using dry ice, but continued the performance until she realized when her toe started thawing out and there was blood everywhere, she was like, oh shit.
Oh my God. That's commitment
right there, yeah.
Yeah, and I think from what I remember, she used to tour with like horror circuses and things, like circus horrors and stuff, but like that was what I wanted my drag to be like. But in 2007, people barely understood what a drag king was, let alone a horror-based drag king. So I knew that I couldn't make that happen for Drag Idol. I had to just go with the camp. So when I created Baron a few years back again, I was like, I need to do what I wanted to do initially. So obviously the name, etc., all ties into that as far as I'm concerned. And I think even just a mingling outfit for Baron is quite influenced by the Gothic subcultures. The Leviathan cross is pretty much emblazoned on every costume that I have somewhere, which obviously pulls back to Anton LaVey. And then, of course, we add in Vampus tits.
Oh, yes.
My favourite.
We wanted, and I don't know if many people know this, but the original Vampus tits concept was actually myself and Penny Arcade.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we'd come up with the concept whilst they were working at Central for me. They left the weekend before the first Vampus tits started.
Oh, yeah.
So I was like, well, I need to continue this because we've got contestants, like it's all going ahead. So that's when we brought Jack in to take over the spot that Penny would have had. And I think it was a very good choice because I think myself and Jack work quite nicely together.
Yeah.
Happy accidents. But I think we do need to definitely indicate that it was mine and Penny's idea initially, because Penny doesn't get any recognition for the concept of Vampus tits.
Yeah, I kind of knew, but I don't think it's very well known within our scene.
No. But I think she deserves the recognition for that as well. But yeah, Vampus tits is it's different. It's I enjoy it because it is something completely different for the gay scene.
Yeah. So what explain Vampus tits to someone, to maybe one of the listeners who has never heard of it. Explain what it is.
Okay, so if you've never heard of it, but you've heard of RuPaul's Drag Race and you've heard of Boulet Brothers Dragula, it's mixing those two together and using All Stars as a base. So
Yes.
So we have themes every week. It's a drag competition, horror-based competition. So we don't call it an alternative drag because we're not necessarily looking for alternative drag. We're just looking for drag that fits the theme.
Yeah.
Because realistically, Pebble Dash, you are not an alternative drag queen.
No.
But you won the first year because you managed to hit the themes.
Yeah.
So all of the themes are usually horror-based. We ask for a performance from each contestant based around that theme. We don't judge on the way people look because it's their drag. It's got nothing to do with us whether or not we like their drag. If they like their drag, then that's what matters. Although we might talk about them behind their back.
We do. And sometimes the guest judges say it straight to the face.
Absolutely. And then we choose the top two and the bottom two of the week. The top two then go through into a challenge. The winner of the challenge then chooses who of the bottom two leave the week. So we get off easily as judges because we don't actually ever send anyone home.
Yeah.
Which is quite nice.
Absolutely.
But the challenges can be challenging, shall we say?
They can. Can you give me an example?
Yes. So there's three that really stick out in my mind. Was the first week of the first Vampus Tits. I put down a meal in front of the two contestants that comprised of all things that are edible that came from a Chinese supermarket. So all of it looked disgusting, but as far as I was aware, most of it was perfectly fine to eat. But I think because they didn't know what it was put down in front of them and they weren't aware of what it was, it probably looked even scarier than it actually was.
Yeah.
Oh, I might have to add this in, that we make the contestants sign a waiver before they participate in the competition for allergies and for heart problems, etc. So and so that we don't get sued for any harm that comes to them. So that first week we put that meal down in front of them. One of the queens, Travesty, was doing really well, was just hoofing it all down. Crystal Meth was struggling a little bit. She threw up onto a plate.
Oh.
And I remember loads of people turning around and looking at me like, are you going to stop this? And I was like, fuck no, this is what I wanted. Like, exactly what I wanted from this competition. And then Travesty did the unthinkable and leant over and dipped some of her food in Crystal's vomit and ate that. And I was like, this is exactly what this scene needs right now.
Definitely, yeah.
People eating each other's vomit.
Fucking filth. Like, this is exactly what I love about drag, is the filth aspect of it. And I think sometimes we all take ourselves too seriously and still want to look really beautiful all of the time. But filth is a massive aspect of drag.
Yeah. I would 100% agree with that. I remember that moment. And I mean, it was rotten to watch but it was hilarious.
It was one of those car crash moments, wasn't it? You just don't want to look away either. You're like, oh, this is disgusting, but oh my God, yes. We also had, we've had several eating challenges, but the other eating challenge that stands out for me is when I gave the contestants, it was Ivy and... was it Bailey Bubbles? I gave Ivy and someone got a lamb's heart, a raw lamb's heart. I think it was Bailey.
I think it was
Bailey, yeah.
Yeah. And they both got down on the floor and started like, it was again filth, but perfect.
Just to be clear, they were eating the lamb's heart.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. From
great
the floor.
big chunks.
It was disgusting in the best way.
That was rotten. And I was looking devastatingly stunning that night, and somebody poured the blood over my wig.
Yes, yeah.
Rude.
And it stunk.
Oh
my God,
rotten.
It stinks so bad. And the only other one that really, really sticks out in my mind is not an eating one. And I've never heard a bar so quiet in all of my life, is when we did the lie detector challenge.
Oh yes, that was so good.
So initially we were going to have one of those things that gives you electric shocks, like one of those games, but it didn't come in time, so we ended up just using a really terrible shit app, like an iPhone app that was like, oh, you're lying, and everyone knew that it was bollocks, but the questions that we were asking, I think, is what made people actually interested in hearing the answers, because we were quite vicious with the questions.
Give us an example.
So there was so again, Ivy, at the time, Ivy, Mixie and Foking Dick were talking about moving to Manchester.
Yes.
And one of my questions to Ivy was, do you actually think you'll move to Manchester, or is it a pipe dream?
Oh yeah.
And Mixie and Dick were both in the audience as well.
Of course.
And another one was Velvet Snatch had made some comments on the Girl podcast a few weeks previous about drag kings. And I think I asked Velvet, do you actually really respect drag kings, or do you just say you are because you think you're going to get further in the competition?
Ooh. You're evil and I live.
Oh yeah, and everyone assumed that it was Jack that had written the questions, but it wasn't. It was me.
Of course. Poor Jack.
But next time we do that one, because we will bring the lie detector back, because that was just too good to not do again. We will have one of the
like a polygraph kind of things.
Yeah, an electric shock thing.
Oh,
so it doesn't even matter if they're telling the truth or not. They're probably going to get shocked and we'll enjoy it anyway.
Fair.
So I have another question for you about Vampir's Tits. So obviously it was like you could see like loads of creativity in there with a lot of the contestants. What was your favourite?
So I was actually thinking about this yesterday when me and Jack spoke about Vamp. There are a few moments that really stand out. Velvet did on the live week of that year. They had to use I'd sent all of the contestants extracts from satanic rituals,
Mm-hmm.
and they had to conduct a live ritual on stage, but they could do what they wanted with it. They could make it camp, they could make it serious. Like, I didn't care as long as they used what I'd given them in some way. And Velvet did this whole like dramatic entrance. He had like monks behind him, like they were all in big robes, they were all carrying candles, and he plopped this Cthulhu statue down on the stage. It was so atmospheric, and because his voice is just perfect for that kind of live performance as well, it literally just left me with goosebumps.
Yeah,
because it was just so perfect. And I think the Ivy's Tooth Fairy performance.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
Where she had someone staple wings to her body, like actually to her skin. And then she pulled out a pair of pliers and put them in my mouth. And I've got a terrible fear of the dentists. So there was already like an anxiety there for me anyway. She put these pliers in my mouth. And then I hadn't even spotted that there was some sort of syringe attached to the pliers. So when she put the pliers in my mouth, she squirted what I then found out was beetroot juice into my mouth. But because I was in such a moment with the dentist thing, in my head, I was like, this is blood. Like, this is blood. Why am I bleeding? And I leant over and I spat it out. And I think there's a video somewhere on Instagram where you and Jack both scream either side of me and jump away. Like, what have you just spat on the floor? I literally had no idea that was going to happen.
Those were definitely good performances. I think one of my favourite performances from Vamp, I loved Ivy's one about the ocean.
I was just about to say that.
Yeah.
So good.
I thought that was really clever. This is what I like about Ivy and Frida, is they have really clever ideas. And
they're so conceptual,
yeah. They're able to execute them well they can give you a message without hitting you over the head with it.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
That's a very specific talent to have. Not everyone has that.
Can you remember all that fish?
Oh, it was stinking.
Oh.
Yeah, that's another issue I have is fish. And I hate the smell of fish. I hate looking at fish. Fish eyeballs make me really upset. So, like, I think it's the only time in the entire 2 runs of the competition that we've had that I haven't been okay with something else. Ivy throwing up into a bucket in her first week, I'm totally okay with.
Oh, yeah.
But fish.
But fish, absolutely not.
Not a fan. I think my favourite performance for the first Vampus Tits was just Ollie Mine.
Your performances were very cleverly done.
And they were camp. I got to still be camp and kind of ridiculous, which is the word that I use every time I send Baron anything that I'm working on. Look how ridiculous this is.
Yes.
So what would you say has been your own personal scariest or spookiest experience?
Right. So being a bit of an adrenaline junkie, growing up in the family that I grew up in, who are very spiritual, a pagan group of people, I have always been fascinated in the paranormal. I have been on many, many, many paranormal investigations because I love to be scared. So put me in a position where I'm possibly going to come into contact with something that's going to growl at me from beyond. Like, I'm right there. Like, however, of all of the paranormal investigations I have partaken in, my scariest experience is actually in one of the nightclubs on the gay scene. And it's incredibly haunted. I'm not going to say the name because they probably don't want this aspect of the nightclub.
They probably still want people to know.
But yeah, anyone local knows. So it's, I used to be the assistant manager in this nightclub. And I was in one Thursday afternoon. We were doing deliveries. I had a member of staff in with me, and we were walking down the staircase, the main staircase, which passes what we call the main floor. and there was a noise came from the main floor. And at this point, we'd already known that this place was haunted. We'd had a couple of experiences, but nothing major. But the lights were all off. So I thought we're going to have to go in and check just in case, like when we've had the doors open for the deliveries, someone's actually gotten in. So walked in. You have to walk across the pitch black bar to turn the lights on.
Oh, God.
So you have to walk into that main room in the absolute pitch darkness before you can see anything. So I was halfway across this bar, and this bar is probably maybe 6-7 meters long.
Yeah.
Would you say? Yeah, it's about 6.
Yeah, about that.
Yeah. I was halfway across this bar in the pitch black with the member of staff close behind me, like panicking. And I saw something directly across from the bar, and it looked like the shadow of a person in front of the booth seating directly opposite.
Yes.
And I stopped dead and I looked at it for a moment and I thought, I've just imagined that. That's fine because it wasn't there, like, after I'd noticed it.
Yeah.
So I went, turned the lights on, couldn't see anything. Went up onto the stage, and I couldn't see anything still. And I was like, right, okay, that's weird. Don't know what the noise was then. So we went back to turn the lights off. And then a noise came from the bottom of the room. So we ran up onto the stage because I thought that's going to be the best place to see it. So I got up onto the stage and I was looking and I saw a shadow move over the front of the fire exit sign at the far end of the room.
Right. Ooh.
So it blocked out the fire exit sign.
Oh my God.
So it was very tall.
I am never going back to this place.
I've got so many stories about this place, honestly, and there's evidence and everything. It's crazy. I actually had a professional paranormal investigator come into the venue to do an investigation one day because I was like, I can't physically do this anymore.
Is this also the same venue where you left like a lamb's head and that very well-known local story? Yes,
it is that same venue.
I wonder why it's haunted.
So we were stood watching and I stood for ages and I was like, I don't want to move. I don't know if this is a person. I don't know if this is something of the supernatural realm. And we were watching and I was waiting for something else to move. Like I was waiting to see some more movement and I couldn't see anything for ages. But then I realized that the reason that we couldn't see anything at person height was because it wasn't at person height anymore.
Oh.
It was crawling.
Oh.
Yeah. Like
that sounds like some demonic nonsense.
Yeah, so it was like a fucking horror film. And I'm glad I wasn't alone because no one would ever believe me if I'd said that it's evil on its own. But there was someone there with me witnessing the whole thing. It was crawling towards us really slowly across the dance floor. And of course the dance floor is a light up dance floor. So when the lights are off, it's just white. So you could see this figure crawling towards us on the dance floor. There's another moment. That's probably the most scariest thing I've ever experienced.
That's awful.
Some spooky shit.
The scariest thing I've experienced here has been accosted in the toilets.
I mean, that's pretty bad though.
It really is. It's so annoying as well.
There was another moment where I was locking up after a night. So it was at maybe like 5 o'clock in the morning. And there were a couple of members of staff with me that night. But I was locking up, just about to set the alarms in what was then the vault, but is now, shouldn't have said that, was then a different bar to what it is now. And I went to flick the lights off in that room and I could see down the staircase, there was a spiral staircase and I could see that the door to the ladies' toilets was moving backwards and forwards. Like, just ever so slightly, but enough for us to notice it, like down a floor. So I stopped and I was like, why is that door moving? And I was like, right, it doesn't matter, set the alarm. Walked out the room, and as I walked out the room, the door, rather than shutting slowly like it did, like it was supposed to shut, it slammed shut behind me as if someone had come up behind me and slammed it to keep me out of the room. the next day, because that was unnerving, but it was fine. Like, it's not the worst thing. But the next day I went in and I was like, I'm going to have to look at that CCTV to work out why that door was moving. So got the CCTV up, and the door was moving on the CCTV. I hadn't imagined it, which is great. But there was a face in the door. It was in the glass of the door, and it looked like it was almost coming through the glass.
Oh my God.
I think I have a picture of that somewhere.
I am boycotting this bar. That bar needs some sage in its life.
Oh, it was horrific. Like, some of the stuff I experienced in that place was just next level shit. And that's why I had a paranormal investigator come in, because at one point I wasn't sleeping. It was affecting me really badly, really negatively.
Oh. I could not be handling that.
It's dark. It is. The entities in that place are dark, and
I mean, so are half the customers, to be fair.
Well, yeah. even now going in, I can sense them in certain areas. The corner that everyone sits in on a Sunday night, the one just before the staircase. There is something in that corner, and it's horrific.
I don't ever sit in that corner. That's in a different part of the bar, isn't it? I know what you mean. Yeah. I don't ever sit there. I feel like I never really go to that part yet. Yeah, even when we're meant to. No, thank you. No, thank you. And it's also this, for me, it's the reason I'm horrified by it is usually because that's where Illuminati is mortal, dancing about like a slag.
Or Michael March, yeah.
Or Michael March. Or Brenda, bless him.
Yes.
So, outside, obviously, we're all based in Newcastle. Outside of Newcastle, is there any, it doesn't have to be horror related, but is there any queens that you would kind of recommend we check out, broaden our knowledge of UK or foreign queens?
So, Paul Alexander, I live for.
Oh, yeah.
Birmingham,
we know Paul.
Yes.
Really good.
Birmingham based. Everything that they do is just really incredibly conceptual. The bizarre doll things that they make, I'm just like, yes, I live. And such an absolute sweetheart. Absolutely adore Paul. Lucius Black is a drag king from Birmingham. Hot as fuck.
Oh, I may follow them. I think I might follow them.
They're a POC. They do loads of like beautiful vampire looks and creepy clown looks and things. Absolutely. I could just look at their face forever. Of course, I'm going to say Landon Cider.
Obviously. Yeah.
Obviously. The best drag king in the world, as far as I'm concerned, Landon Cider. I was the happiest drag king in the UK the day that he won Dragula. Just a wonderful moment for drag kings and spooky kings everywhere.
Well deserved.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Very well deserved.
Yeah.
What do you think? Just when we're talking about kings, because even I done it there when I asked the question, I asked about is there any drag queens, because that's the natural part of my vernacular. Why do you think kings don't get as much recognition as queens? I know that's a very big question, but if you could keep your answer short.
I think there are a couple of reasons. I think one being as it's taken the last decade, I think, for drag kings to elevate their art as much as queens have. And I don't want to compare them in that way, but it's, for a long time, being a drag king was as easy as drawing on a eyeliner mustache and putting a top hat on. Like, I think taken the last decade for them to realize that actually we should put some artistry into it as well. Because there just wasn't, and the performances were always stellar regardless. Drag kings generally take a more political take on things, and that's always important. But when you are competing with drag queens who are inspired by Drag Race, then you need to add that extra artistry in there in order to keep up. And I think part of it is because it's taken so long for drag kings to push that artistry into the art form.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and I think it's the same as when I started doing Baron. I feminized the drag makeup that I used to do because it made sense for a drag queen loving cis male audience.
Yes.
They appreciated my drag more if I looked a little bit queen-esque than when I looked like a man.
So my last question for you
is,
it's a two-parter. What does horror mean to you and your queerness? And why do you think horror has such an appeal to the queer community?
For me, it's the rush of adrenaline. It's the love of being scared. As a non-binary AFAB person,
tell them.
Yes, I have grown up being told to be careful when I'm out alone, to not walk alone at night, to carry my keys in my hand, to watch out for men walking behind me. For me, it's taking back that control over my life, almost. It's the same as having a fascination for serial killers, which I also do. It's about pulling that power back into my own life, to stop being so terrified all of the time of my real life, almost. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Because I still look behind me if I'm walking at night. I still worry about myself if I'm going to walk home from town after a night out, even though I know the area that I live in is very safe. So it's definitely about regaining control, I think, for me. If I am allowing myself to be scared by something, if I'm giving myself the opportunity to be scared, then it takes away the fear.
Yeah. I think, that's a perfect way to describe it. Just what you're saying there as well is, I think what you've just said there about how, as a younger person, not really self-identifying, but being identified as female by your peers and by your elders, I think that's a big part of why the queer community and women have got along. There's obviously misogyny within the queer community, but I think there's something that we can identify in where there's something about us that we can't control as gay men that we'll have a level of fear about. So the same thing, it's not safe for us to walk alone at night. The same kind of thing, obviously for different reasons and different outcomes generally. But there's are we going to get battered if I quote unquote act gay? Am I going to be noticed? So I think that's kind of why that's there. The misogyny in the gay scene, we could have a field day. That's another podcast. We'll do another episode.
Yes.
And the other part was, why do you think horror is so kind of appealing to the queer community?
I think it's a very similar. I think it's a very similar concept to what it means to me, to be honest. And I think if you're looking at drag within the queer community, if you're looking at the alternative, your horror drag, it's about taking that control. And you have the control of giving fear or giving shock to an audience. And possibly even shocking yourself in the process. There are things that I've done on stage that afterwards I've gone, I can't believe I did that on stage. Because it's taking back that power as a community. It's taking back that power as well.
Yeah. So you think like horror can kind of be like a release, like a gateway to those kind of feelings?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way to think about it. And I'll be honest with you, it's not a way that I've ever thought about it.
Same.
Yeah, so I think that's really... For me, it's other. We are all other. And horror movies generally are about other. So, for instance, we are doing a deep dive into Halloween because it's my favourite horror movie. And actually that horror movie is about a little boy that didn't fit in. and then the ramifications of him being left after, which is something that we're able to, whether it's our own story. I'm really lucky my parents were just like, oh, you're gay, whatever. But having gay friends who I know haven't had that experience, and other people falling under, whether it's their gender not being accepted, their sexual identity not being accepted, their gender or sexual expression not being accepted, even down to sex work not being accepted. Do you know what I mean? Stigmatization. Yeah. Mm. And I think as well, there's one of the things we mention all the time is zombie movies. So zombie movies are always released, major studio zombie movies are always released around the time of a pandemic or an epidemic.
Oh, yes.
The 80s with HIV was when there was a massive release, because it's something that we can so intrinsically relate to, not to say if you had AIDS or HIV you're a zombie, or if you've got coronavirus you're a zombie, obviously not, but it's a relation that you can see because those were people once and they got something that they couldn't help.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So I think that for me is always where my view of the queer community and the horror community and that crossover is that sense of being other and escape obviously is a massive thing, which I guess kind of falls into what you were saying is the escapism of horror.
Mm-hmm.
And being scared of something that you know isn't real.
Yeah.
Which is easier than being scared of something that is. So, yeah. Absolutely. No, I think that was a really interesting way to look at it. Thanks. Well, Baron, we are at the end. Have you got anything at all that you would like to plug? Give us all your links.
Go on.
Okay, so TikTok at Baron Lavey, Instagram at Baron Lavey Drag. That's all I've got.
Short and sweet.
Is there any news on a Vamp's Tits 2021?
It's in discussion currently.
Ooh, that is very exciting.
Yes.
Ooh. Well, listen, Baron, it's been honestly so good having you on to speak today, and you're our first ever guest.
That's exciting.
Thank you.
First ever guest. Obviously, we will be posting links to Baron Lavey's socials on our podcast Instagram, and we'll also link it on our personal Instagrams as well. You all know how to go and find a podcast by now, because I post about it every single day. And make sure you rate and subscribe and review, because it helps us with our algorithms.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, doll. You can follow the podcast at A Horrible Time Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. You can follow your host Anthony at
Anthony Detro on Twitter and at Diamond Hardskin on Instagram. You can follow Pebble at
It's Pebble Dash on Instagram and Famous Cunt on Twitter. Recorded by Pebble and Anth, mixed and mastered by Pebble Dash. Artwork by Graphic Design.